Amy. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm J.C. Weiss, as this name tag there suggests. I think I might know most everybody. I'm pinch hitting for Murray today, which is couldn't have picked a better session for me to do that, to introduce you to the new, relatively new, year and a half CEO of Tedco, Troy Stovall.
Very good.
I have a long history with Tedco since they started 24 years ago, and it's great to see Troy on board. He comes with an extraordinary background. It goes on for pages. I will direct you to the Tedco website, please, to read it. But most recently, he'd been the COO at the University of District of Columbia. He'd been with several other HBCUs across the country in senior executive positions. He was awarded the Thurgood Marshall HBCU CFO of the Year, which is a wonderful award. But it wasn't just higher ed. He's been in industry. He was with McKinsey. He graduated summa cum laude from Southern Methodist with a BS in electrical engineering, earned a master's of science in computer science from Stanford, and a Harvard MBA, which we won't hold against him, but that's quite a...
I try not to hold against myself, so I appreciate that.
But his most significant accomplishments are right at the end of his biographical sketch. And it says, Troy has also coached an award-winning youth robotics team and is a USA Swimming certified stroke and turn coach and chief judge official. And he's a triathlete, and he's married a marathoner. And so, no surprise, his children, Sonia and Zora, are both talented young athletes. So it's a real pleasure to welcome Troy to the University of Baltimore today and to enlighten us on Tedco, which I think is a shining jewel in the entire economic development array of things that the state of Maryland has. And it's a little different than the other tools that the Department of Commerce uses. So I'm going to turn it over to you for the next 12, 15 minutes to talk to us about what you do every day with your day job here.
My day job. Well, look, thank you, JC, for that. And thank Murray for inviting me. You know, your president, President Smoke, is an old friend of mine. He and I were together at Howard for a number of years. And so he and I have just stayed in touch over the years. I'm very proud to be able to call him a friend and be part of his orbit. And very proud to be part of, I've done some work already there at the University of Baltimore with the work with Motive and the folks. So again, JC kind of did a quick backdrop on me. I am, you know, a consultant, well, an engineer, computer scientist, consultant, have run a family investment office, have run a venture outside of Tedco. I've run a family investment office. I still advise several family investment offices. I've run a venture capital fund through those family investment offices. Did as I call it, my detour into higher ed. It served at a number of institutions of higher learning. And the cool thing about being here at Tedco is I have to use all those pieces because as you'll hear me talk about it, and you probably know, there's elements of Tedco that very much engage and work with our university community in Maryland. There is obviously a huge engineering, computer science piece. There's a consultative piece that I have to do. And as JC was pointing out, there's a huge, half of my time is with the legislature. And you know, right now during the season that we're in, I spend either I'm physically in Annapolis or I'm Zooming my way to Annapolis. I have been physically in Annapolis this session. Last session we weren't. So let's talk about Tedco. And the way I like to always start my discussion with Tedco, and I'm hoping, you know, I know we got the format is, you know, we're going to go into some breakouts and then ask some questions. But you know, let's if something I say isn't clear, please stop me. I don't want to lose anybody. So that said, so I think of life, and so you got to realize I grew up in Texas. And so don't hold that against me. That means I'm a Cowboys fan by blood, and so therefore we have a horrible football team. Which is because the joke I tell people is there are only two sports in the state of Texas: football and spring football. And I'm telling you, at a spring football game, high school football game, you can get 50,000 people at a spring high school football game. There's just no joke about it. So but I grew up Catholic, and so, but my family was Baptist, and so I had this huge influence of Baptist preachers around me. And so I like alliterations. I like the way they talk with alliterations. So you're going to hear several alliterations today. So I'm giving you my excuse of why that's going to be the case. So I start off with talking about, as a consultant, the question, the conversation always has to start off with, what's the question? What's the problem you are trying to solve? And the problem we're trying to solve and you're going to hear me use the words entrepreneurial and innovation community. And I'm purposeful with my language, because as you'll hear me later on talking about the programmatic and funding aspects of Tedco, we're not just always funding entrepreneurs, we're also funding innovations. And so you'll hear me say that. And so I'm being purposeful in that. So the question facing the entrepreneurial innovation community in Maryland and across the country are 3 T's. There are 3 T's, JC. All entrepreneurs lack access to time, access to talent, and because I need a 3rd T, access to treasure. And that's the kind of the bucket for resources. The resources aren't just the right check writing, as you will talk about. It's access to talent. It's access to other resources of the state, like incubators, like 3D printing, like wet labs. It's those other things that they need in order to scale. And so the question for Tedco is, how do we give them a minute back? How do we give them access to talent, that the people that they need? And by the way, not just talent, but a talent that's representative of the state of Maryland. And when I say representative, it's not just a traditional, gender or race. It's also about geography. We need to be intentional about ensuring that every part of the state participates. So for instance, at the end of next month, I'm going to spend several days in Western Maryland. I've got a time that I'm going out to Eastern Shore, going down to Southern Maryland. This is about ensuring that all parts of the state and all individuals in the state of Maryland have access to entrepreneurship and innovation. And then how do we also give them access to things that they might need to help them scale? Because this is about scaling. This is about creating a scale. This is about what we really want to do is, JC, is so that when outside venture capitalists see a Maryland funded entity that's funded through Tedco, we want them to say, wow, not only are they have a technology that has a great market that's addressable and attainable, and they got great talent. I want them to say that all the stuff behind them is working. So they are a real company. And so what we've got to do is, it's not just about writing a check for these entities, but it's also making sure they have the right infrastructure to scale, and that when they present themselves to the next round, to those traditional institutional rounds, that people will say, wow, something's going on in Maryland, that they aren't just ready technologically, they're ready organizationally. And that is what we're spending a lot of our time trying to figure out. So addressing the 3 T's leads me to 2 F's. And those 2 F's are funding and foundation. And now everyone knows about the funding. Most people know about the funding side of Tedco, and I'll spend time on that. But I actually want to start with what I call the foundation side. And in that series of services and programs, so after we've written the check, which again, I'll come back to, we also provide coaches. We provide network that we pay for, network advisors, people who know a specific industry sector or know a specific thing about a specific administrative thing that needs to be done. We have market database, these real amazing market database, some of which I'm sure you guys have there at Baltimore. We allow our portfolios to give access to. We are engaged with every single incubator and makerspace in the state. Matter of fact, one of the bills that's going through right now would even give us more funding to bring more makerspaces. And we want to create some makerspaces, JC, that are targeted towards teenagers, because I believe that innovation and entrepreneurship has no age boundaries. And someone can be 9 or 90 and they can have an innovation. And we've got to find ways to tap into that 9-year-old and that 90-year-old. And so this is about creating this foundational support. The other thing that we've done through this foundational support is through talent. I mentioned this talent acquisition. Many times these new enterprises don't have good access to talent. LinkedIn isn't always the best place to go find talent. So we're developing a talent portal that will allow us to bring together talent and allow our entrepreneurs to find talent that they may not be able to find. And our goal is also to be able to highlight diverse talent. Again, the diverse, as I mentioned before, about the notion of diversity. We're also focused on, back to the incubators, how do we make sure that all incubators in the state of Maryland are operating at a certain level? And so we want to, there's some really, really good ones and some that are doing okay. We want to make sure that all incubators are actively and moving at a pace that makes sense for the state of Maryland, so that it doesn't matter what zip code you are in, you will always have access to a great set of resources between incubators and makerspaces. We've recently launched what we've always had an effort in our rural areas called RBII, where we have spent time, we've carved a step in the 4 areas, and we have an individual who is stationed in each of those areas, and they work with that ecosystem. They work with the universities, they work with the economic development, they work with the counties, they work with the cities, they work with other entities to make sure that opportunities are happening. We do some pre-funding of that. But what we never focused on, and for a variety of reasons, are urban areas. And so we've recently launched an effort in Baltimore City and in Prince George's County. We have an individual in Baltimore City, Dr. Tamira Lucas, and then Tiffany Davis in Prince George's County. And we call it UBII, our Urban Business Innovation Initiative. And the goal of that effort is to ensure that an entrepreneur in those communities is in Prince George's County. And it's also meant to stitch together. You're going to need to stick back to, I got some 3 S's too, and I'll come back to those. We want to stitch together the elements that are in Baltimore City and in Prince George's County. And we want to stitch them together, JC, so that they create scale. Because we've got a lot of good little stuff happening. We got to find a way to bring all of the little stuff so we have greater scale in the state of Maryland if we're going to be competitive. And so that's the foundation side. I probably missed some elements there. I see my our vice president for marketing communications on Tammy Thomas. She does a tremendous job with the small team. If you need anything, any information, go to our website. The website is an amazing amount of information, and many of you have already referenced the press release about CAF, which I'll talk about. Tammy and her team are the masters of making sure all that gets out. So,
Roy, I'm going to let you take a breath for just a second. You've been going 100 miles an hour. Your Tammy has been doing a phenomenal job of putting links to all your resources in the chat, and we'll capture that, but we also direct everybody back to your website. In about 5 minutes, we're going to break into chat rooms where on a random basis where people can talk about what they've heard, come up with questions, and then we'll come back and have about a half hour of Q&A. And so you were going through the 3 T's and the 2 F's, but you didn't talk about funding. So might you just take a couple minutes to say, what is the breadth? I mean, I need $50 million. Come on now, you're going to write me a check. Or I need $50,000 or $25,000. And what stage? Do you do early seed stage? Maybe spend a couple of minutes on your funding side.
Yep. No, that's a perfect lead in. So thanks for that, JC. So yes, we do early stage, but what we do is we do everything for what I call when it's been a napkin idea, a post napkin idea, or still in the research labs at our universities, all the way through what's called a Series A. So let me quickly walk you through that. Again, all this is on our website. So our 2 efforts that we have, one effort that we have that's worked directly with the universities and with 5 research universities that we have here in Maryland, which are Johns Hopkins, University of Maryland, College Park, Maryland, Baltimore, UMBC, and then Morgan State. We work with them on their tech transfer. So we do a lot of great work moving and moving those labs, the things that have been funded through these great lab research, and how do we bring them in commercialization and bring them into the Tedco pipeline to funding instruments that I'll talk about here in a second. We also have the Maryland Stem Cell effort, which funds, just like it says, stem cell efforts that come both from our universities as well as from companies. And the stem cell effort is really focused on how do you drive cures leveraging stem cell to bring commercialization efforts. Our traditional funding instruments go from what we call our pre-seed builder fund, and we now have wrapped around that what we call a social impact fund. So that is a pre-seed, that pre-seed social impact fund. We write checks in the $150,000 to $200,000 range, but we also, JC, provide a mentor for that, a coach for that person that we pay for, that takes them through the process that they need to go through. The next stage up is called our seed funds. We have a series of seed funds that we can write check anywhere from $250,000 to about $500,000. And we do our seed funds in areas like cyber, life sciences, We have called a GAP fund, a technology commercialization fund, and we now have an inclusion fund. And so a seed stage company is normally one that has gone beyond kind of concept. They may even have a few beta customers, or may even have more customers. They're right before kind of a Series A round. And we then have our Maryland Venture Fund is our Series A instrument, and we can write up to $1.5 million to $2 million check out of our Maryland Venture Fund, which you referenced earlier. And so you're going to hear some announcements from us here in the very near future about some additional funding that we're going to be getting, some significant funding we're going to be getting. We're going to be driving funding into venture capital firms themselves through what's called a VCLP model, where we'll actually be a limited partner in some VCs that are managed by people of color and women. We're going to be scaling up the social impact and the social innovation fund. That fund is going to be focused on, again, people of color and women who've not been able to get access to traditional venture capital, which is a problem, and or innovations which impact communities. So for instance, it could be an innovator that looks at something, for instance, looking at the abandoned property in East Baltimore. And so it's going to be those types of investments that may or may not hit the screen for traditional venture funds, but it definitely would hit our screen. The last thing I'll say, and it's an important piece, our traditional definition of technology had been an IP base. It has to be something that had intellectual property associated with it. We're keeping that, but we're expanding our definition to look at those opportunities, particularly in retail or B2C opportunities where people are using technology in order to change the way in which they deliver a product, scale themselves differently, or defend that product differently. And so you're going to see us very much branching out much more broadly into technology. We already have made a number of investments in areas that aren't our traditional base that would have been influenced by our work with our university partners.
Wow, that's a full plate. I recall reading headlines year after year that Tedco was, if not the most prolific seed stage investor in the country, one of the top 5. Is that still true?
Still very true. On the East Coast, we're very active. We're one of the most active on the East Coast and one of the most active in the country. That's correct.
All right. Well, we're going to let you take a break for a minute. And
no, I'm good.
This has been great. And Danielle or Amy, could you split us up into groups, and we'll get to know smaller groups for about the next 10 minutes. And then
as you do that, I see a couple of my colleagues here. I'd like to make sure that they get introduced. We've already introduced
sure.
Tammy. But I also see Ann Balduzzi. When I talked about all that foundational pieces, Ann is the leader of what we call our E3 efforts. And so all the efforts I'm talking about that really support our entrepreneurs beyond just the check writing, and she's got a little bit of check writing that she does too, but beyond the big check writing, that's Ann and her team.
Welcome.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ann Balduzzi, and E3 stands for Entrepreneur and Ecosystem Empowerment.
Wow. Great.
That's why we call it E3. And Jack is also on.
Jack's here.
Jack's here.
There he is.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Jack, I didn't see there. Yep. So Jack's a part of the E3 team as well. I mentioned the RB and the Ruby efforts, rural and urban efforts. Jack is our leader for those efforts.
Okay. Danielle or Amy, can you?
I'm gonna move you all into random, and
so I don't know what happened.
Hmm.
There she is again. Okay. Do we have everybody back?
Looks like it.
Yeah, welcome back, everybody. I know Danielle's been tracking some questions for Troy, and turns out Troy and I were in the same breakout room, so we had a great time to talk. And let me lead off. I had asked Troy to talk a little bit about what are the attributes they look for in the people and the teams that they back. And the reason is, Troy made a comment earlier that they've built such a successful portfolio intentionally to attract other investors. In other words, when other investors, large venture funds, angel investors, whoever it might be, see that Tedco's involved, it's like the good housekeeping seal of approval. You can't slack off on that, or else, because your reputation is your number one thing. So, but to do that, he's got all of these entrepreneurs out there that they back and these teams of entrepreneurs. So Troy, talk to us a little bit about the attributes. What turns you off and what turns you and your team on?
Yeah, no, thanks for that, JC. I'm going to answer it, but there's an important piece I need to bring up and understand our economic model. While we do get a fairly regular appropriation from the state for most of our basic funding, the funding for most of the funding for us to do our investments have already been made to us. And so the future investments, JC, are because of the returns that we get. And I lead with that so that we are making investments. We're not making grants, we're making investments. And these investments have to at some point materialize into a return. And we normally price out or get what's called an exit or liquidity event in around B, C, or D, pick an alphabet where we get a multiple on what we've put in. And the reason that's important because when they're going through this, the fundamental question that I used to get, I remember when I first got into the business, that venture capitalists who are like, kings and queens there in Silicon Valley, they told me repeatedly the same thing. And they told me this to JC's question. Always, Troy, invest with A quality people who probably have a B quality plan and never the reverse. B quality people with an A quality plan. And where I've made money in my previous life and in what we do at Tedco, the first question I always ask is the coachability of someone. Because all the ideas that I have either personally invested in or been involved investing were never the idea when it became successful that at the start. It always had to have some maturation, it had to have some change. And if that entrepreneur, JC, shows up and they are just dead set on that, they have the idea and there's nothing that's going to be changed about it or nothing that they want to change about it, I will tell you sitting here right now, they don't want Tedco money. And I would also tell you it'll be hard for them to find money from any other venture capitalists out there as well. Because those venture capitalists come in, they're putting in quite a bit of money. They're also going to put in their time and their expertise. And they're also going to want to help shape that so that at the end of the day, they make money when they either sell it or IPO or whatever their liquidity exit event is going to be. And so to answer your question is coachability. Yes, we want to make sure that they've got a good market, a good product, a good plan, although depending on where they are in the cycle, they may not have a product. They may not have a plan. They may just have an idea that we need to turn into a product, a proof of concept is called, or a minimum viable product, and then taking that into a product and then helping them realize the types of markets that they could sell into. And a lot of the conversations that we have with entrepreneurs that they have a good idea, but they haven't thought about the go-to-market part of it and how to think about the go-to-market. Or they have a big idea and they're actually too big and they got to bring it down to something that's implementable right now. And so it's back to coachability and our ability to spend time with that entrepreneur, and particularly Ann's team, after we've done our investment with them, spending time with Ann's team, whether it be an incubator or through a network advisor or a coach or a market database. Making sure that they're willing and able to accept that consultation is an extremely viable point. All the other elements have to be there. Yes, they have to have some smartness, something about them, but the coachability is number one and number two.
Well, I couldn't agree more with you. Coachability. My partners and I always look for that. And it's also distinguishing between tenacity and stubbornness. Mm-hmm. Stubborn doesn't get funded. So we've got a couple of questions here in the chat. One is, what is innovative entrepreneurship? And the other is, how does Tedco compare to others entities like this across the country?
Right. So I purposely use the word entrepreneurship and innovation going back to our funding models that we have and our funding vehicles they have, because when you look at our stem cell work in particular, stem cell isn't so much about what they do. They actually don't do investments per se in the tradition. They actually do funding, if you will, grants. And so they're really funding innovation is what they're doing. It's in our with our stem cell partners. And to a small degree, to another degree, that's a lot of what MII is, how you turn an innovator into an entrepreneur, because they're being innovation in those labs, thinking of some really cool stuff that's being funded by the NIHs and the NSS of the world. So how do we turn that innovation to something that's marketable? and how do we bring them into being an entrepreneur? So the distinction is innovation is about the creation of a cool idea. Entrepreneurship is how do you really bring and materialize that and bring it to, and how do you bring it in a go-to-market way, in a conceptual way that has market and customers and people, frankly, at the end of the day, willing to pay for what it is you're trying to innovate around. As far as who we compare to, Tedco is again, if you, Tammy and her team have done this great animation video. You can, she probably has a link in there, and now you can find the website that really tells our history. And we are one of the older ones across the country. One of the ones that actually I'm going to visit them on Wednesday or tomorrow. Our friends up in Pennsylvania, the Ben Franklin Fund is considered one of the older and frankly very successful ones that are across the country. And we're talking to them about how we could potentially look at some partnerships. There's a group down in Virginia. They just changed their name, so I can't think of the new name. It was a CIT. So we talked to those individuals as well. We joke that our monies can't flow across the Potomac, but our opportunity sets and our portfolio should and can, and we're going to be more intentional about doing that. There's some work down going on in North Carolina, but the answer, I think that the implied answer, the implied question is we're doing that research, looking at how successful we are. And as far as we can tell, because there's not a singular database that tracks us, and each one of them do different things. So whereas I said before, we do early from kind of post napkin idea through Series A. And we are I didn't say this, but we're technology agnostic. So you look at our portfolio, we have a range of technologies in our portfolio. Other states have different, so Massachusetts has funds that are very much focused on clean energy or very much focused on bio and life sciences. And so it's not 100% apples to apples comparison, because some of them will do earlier stage or may only do seed and Series A. And so the answer to the question is it depends, because each state has made a different determination of where they want to invest and what sector they want to invest and what stage they want to do that investment in.
So besides bio, which has gotten a lot of attention the last couple of years because of the pandemic and vaccine development and so forth, what other industries in Maryland
oh my God,
are getting venture funding?
I mean, like I said, we're technology agnostic, and Ann probably will pipe in here and Jack, because I mean, we have a broad range of everything from cyber and life sciences. We actually have some B2C technologies as well in our portfolio right now. Ann and Jack were involved with a really cool concept through the RBI. It's kind of Uber with a helicopter service that's actually pretty cool technologies. We're doing some stuff in aquaponics and hydroponics as well, with some clean energy work that's really beginning to emerge. And so that's the cool thing about us here at Tedco. We're doing some investments here recently around blockchains, as well as NFTs and crypto. We've got some investments in those spaces as well. So that's the cool thing about being here at Tedco, that we get to see this broad portfolio of technologies, and we really do get to see the innovation and the amazing concepts that people have across the state. And again, because of what we do with RBI, we don't just see stuff in the 95 corridor. We're seeing stuff from Southern Maryland and the Shore and Western Maryland that's just as exciting as what we see here in the 95 corridor. And I don't know if you want to add, or Jack, take away from that.
Yeah, no, I think, our AR, VR, there's a lot of new technologies on the horizon. We even have talked to companies that are in the future quantum computing space. So it goes all the way to that spectrum, but then it also comes down to, HR solutions and things in that spectrum. So it really runs the gamut.
So Ann, what about machine learning, AI? Are you active in those areas?
I would say very much so. Very
much so. Actually, Ann has this, we're doing a Lunch and Learn series that we started, and Ann's going to be leading a conversation that I've seen parts of already around AI. And she knows every time she does it, I don't know if I'm impressed or scared of some of the potential applications of AI that are on the horizon.
All right. I'm going to open it up to your team a little bit. They've been so good. And
yep.
Anything that you all, I know you got the boss here, but anything that you would like to add from your perspective at Tedco? It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Jack, thanks for having us. Yeah, unfortunately, Jack had to drop off to go to another meeting, but One of the things that, just to remind everybody that came up in our meeting or our breakout session, is that our UBI group, you all are actually a partner with our UBI group. So that's one of the ways in which we're partnering around the ecosystem with a lot of different entities. And one of those partnership initiatives that launched not too long ago is called the Maryland Entrepreneur Hub. So highly recommend if you've got, students or faculty or anybody that's looking to just, dive into what's going on in the ecosystem. In addition to Tedco's website, which I highly recommend as a first stop, Tammy's done a beautiful job with that site. There is also the Maryland Entrepreneur Hub. That's just a resource out there that companies can go to and search on events and organizations, incubators, accelerators. All of that information is available and was designed and set up in combination with the USM and also with Commerce. We all got together and created this platform and are continuing to look for more input and feedback on it so that we can continue to keep it growing.
Yep.
And Tammy, I think you've downloaded almost the whole website into our chat room. This has been great.
Thank you, JC. I was trying to keep up with Troy.
Tough to do. Tough to do.
Yeah, so even the Maryland Entrepreneur Hub, that link is in there as well. So here for you to see.
Yeah, to please. And again, I think two things. From a process, I mentioned a lot of different funds, and I know it can be somewhat confusing. And Tammy, the team have a tool there that you can answer some questions that will direct you to what we think what might be the right tool. But let me encourage you, don't get caught up in that. Apply. If you have an idea you think we can fund, apply, and we'll figure out the best place for you. And I also will tell you, because that's the second point, part of this journey of being an entrepreneur is about failure, is about rejection, is about starting and failing and starting and failing and starting. That's part of the journey. Anne's an entrepreneur, she can tell you that's part of the journey. And so I say that in terms of the process with Tedco, because you could come to it to us with your idea, which you could think is the greatest thing, and we look at it and we just don't have the proper fit for you at Tedco. But this is what I will commit to you, is that we won't just say no to you. We're going to say, hey, this is where you need to go and do, or you need to work with our friends at an SBDC, or you need to go work with our friends at this particular place, or our friends here, because we get that innovation may not always be quite ready for what we do, but that doesn't mean it couldn't be ready eventually. And so we want to give you the tools to have it get ready eventually. Okay.
Troy, I've gotten a question here. What should our students be looking for? What advice would you give them? And what should they know? Keep in mind, they think they already know it all, but what else should they know?
So I've said a few moments ago, that we look for, that A quality person with a B quality plan. I think part of defining an A quality person, JC, is someone who has passion. And they have to, they have to know the product, have to know the market. We're going to ask them all those questions. They have passion because, when we fund this, we're looking for somebody who's going to be all in. You can't kind of be a half entrepreneur. And so this isn't something you can halfway do. And so, and it's the simple things that you kind of see out there. So many of the ideas that we get presented to us are individuals who had a problem in their personal life, who had a challenge in their personal life, and they started tinkering around with something, and that something became an idea, and that idea became a concept, and that idea got brought to us. And so the answer to your question is, don't try to go off and figure out how to do some cool AI or ML cool thing. It could be something that you're doing right now that's frustrating for you right now. And that frustrating thing could be solved with technology. I'd ask you to think about that. It doesn't have to be the next cool Google or Uber or any of that stuff. It could be something right in what you're doing, your family's going through, particularly during COVID. I think during COVID, we've all kind of seen how we have to operate differently. So think about that, JC. Think about something that you can solve that helps make your life better, because that's the question. That's the question.
It's good that you brought that up. I know that Henry, who runs our Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, and I double team a lot, and we've got several students who've created, I don't know that they're exactly medical devices, but they're in that broadly defined world of dealing with people's medical issues and diagnostics, things like that. Not so much treatments, but sometimes it's just a medical device, things of measure.
Absolutely.
And there is, my experience is that's an active market out there. Doesn't get a lot of press, but are you seeing medical, those types of things?
Absolutely.
Please chime in.
Absolutely. We're seeing quite a bit of medical devices, but one of the challenges that we have with medical devices in Maryland is that we don't have the manufacturing capacity to turn them into viable products. And so many of our, and even on the therapeutics as well, a couple of investments that we've made, I was talking to the founders, and many of them are going out of state to the North Carolinas of the world in order to do the manufacturing of both the devices and therapeutics. And that's a hole that we have in our ecosystem that we are actively trying to fill. But absolutely, we see a lot of medical devices. But you made me think about something, and Henry reminded me of the company. So I acted as a judge for the business plan competition a few months ago, and one of the cooler companies there was a company that's figured out how to recycle clothes into other clothes. So they're taking old clothes and recycling them into new stuff, and it's kind of this patch thing. And I will tell you, I've never forgotten her passion is what really enamored us as judges. And so it wasn't the coolest technology, but man, she had a passion, and she was very much tied into, how to build sustainable clothing. She had all her great statistics about the amount of waste that goes in the clothing, and how what she was doing could help put a dent into that. And I still walk away from that night. That one, you have several great entrepreneurs, but she stood out in terms of her passion that particular night.
Yeah, Nicole Mighty was the founder.
Thank you.
Spiked Orchids. Yeah.
Yes, Spiked Orchids.
I hope her ears are burning right now. She'd be very pleased to hear you say all this.
I was going to say that sounded awfully familiar.
Yeah. I was just on the phone with her today. She's still grinding away.
Good. Well, that's what it is.
She is tenacious. She really is. Troy, do you ever see a deal that looks pretty interesting, but you don't see a company being built and maybe licensing is the right route?
Oh, absolutely. That does happen. And so we give, we've done that with a couple of companies, and that's back to the coachability, JC, is, being able to give them the pathway. And for instance, we've had a couple of companies that frankly had a great product, had a great kind of plan, but the markets they were trying to go after just were not the right markets. They weren't the right market from a pricing point of view, or the right markets from an entry point of view. And so helping people understand how to get into a market and the sales cycle associated with getting into those markets is a big part of what, and particularly Ann and her team do, but a lot of what we do with our network advisors and our coaches. Because a lot of people have great ideas, but how they then turn that into a sustainable recurring revenue model, it's not as easy as it looks. And that's why there's such a high failure rate for these things. It just is. And you got to get ready for that. And you got to get ready for the hard feedback that's going to come in this. And yes, you can always have nicer words and all that kind of stuff and how you say it, but there's going to be some harsh feedback that comes that you may not even be the right person. There might be a better person than you to run this thing. You may have the right idea, but the wrong market. You may have the right product, right market, but the wrong pricing. I actually, and can have this debate, but I actually argue that pricing is one of the biggest things early entrepreneurs don't do well, is pricing their product. They tend to underprice their product, as opposed to, I see more underpricing than overpricing for the product.
They're afraid they're going to scare a customer away.
Absolutely correct.
That's
Absolutely
crazy.
correct. Exactly correct.
If you were to create a poster for Tedco, which one of the companies you funded would be your poster child?
Oh man, I can't say that, dude. I get into trouble to say that, dude.
We won't tell anybody. All right, pick 2 or 3 then.
Oh man, I couldn't even begin, because there's so many really. I'll probably stick to mostly what we do at our builder fund, because the builder fund, that's our pre-seed fund, and that's where you really see these entrepreneurs who, they don't have friends and family. They don't. They come from backgrounds where no one really probably gave them the time of day. So you got things like Remodel Mate, which is this really cool company that's using technology to better help people do remodeling of their bathrooms and their kitchens through technology. You got another company called Sky Squad, which I'm really excited about. Sky Squad. If you go out to BWI, you'll see their signs. Sky Squad they've got a technology that allows them to pair up their customers with services at airports to create concierge services at the airport. And so they've got exclusive deals. I want to say, I could be wrong, but about 20 or so airports nationwide, and one of them being BWI. So that's, I mean, to have that kind of, again, I mentioned earlier, it's not whiz bang technology. It's kind of a matching service, but it's still a cool technology that's matching up client needs, customer needs that come to airports. They might need help, getting a baggage or getting wheeled to the thing, or getting food, whatever it is they need at an airport, they're matching up their customers with these service providers. So it's people like that that just absolutely do amazing stuff that becomes very cool.
That would be a great poster child. Troy, thank you.
Troy, can you also mention, because since you went there, Clear Mask, because that has to do with a whole lot of the collaboration. So I think that would be a really great story.
Clear Mask is a great story. Yeah, I know I was going to forget somebody like this. So Clear Mask. So Baltimore, minority owned, and during the pandemic, they made a mask that is clear, just as the name implied. They got some great press. They had an article, I want to say, in the Wall Street Journal. They had a Washington Post article about them. And to Tammy's point, the point she's really making is we've exited. They did so well. They got funding that allowed us to exit with a very good return. And they're just doing some great work. And so we're very excited about. So that's a great example of someone that's come through a builder fund, had a great product. And frankly, sometimes products have to have a timing associated with it. So it helped that the pandemic happened with them. Pandemic happened, they took off, they got some funding, we exited, and they're a great success story.
I knew you could do it. That was great. Troy and your team, thank you very, very much for giving us an hour today. I do want to put a little plug in. February 22nd is our next Team with the Dean. And the Dean will be back then, and it'll be Evan Lutz, who is the founder of Hungry Harvest. Another great story.
It's a great story.
And all of you at Tedco are welcome to come back. Just let us know. We'll let you in.
Well, thank you. Always be good to be with our friends from University of Baltimore. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you. Have a great rest of the week.
Can we say this because it's part of your recording? We love Hungry Harvest. Their CEO was even one of our keynote speakers at an Entrepreneur Expo. We want to make sure that goes on record. We love it.
That's great. Thank you all very much.
Thank you all. Everybody be safe.
Appreciate it.
Take care.